A hammer to shatter idols, introducing Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche, the mustachioed maverick of 19th century thought, was a philosophical firebrand. He challenged the very foundations of Western civilization. Born in 1844, this son of a Lutheran pastor became a radical critic of religion, morality, and traditional philosophy. Nietzsche used wit and aphorisms like a surgeon wields a scalpel, dissecting the hypocrisies of his age. He was a philosopher ahead of his time, a seismic force whose tremors are still felt today. Nietzsche's life was a tapestry woven with both brilliance and suffering. He battled debilitating migraines and failing eyesight, eventually succumbing to mental illness. His works, often misunderstood, explore themes of power, nihilism, and the search for meaning in a godless world. He argued that traditional values, born from a slave morality of weakness, stifled human potential. His most famous pronouncements, "God is dead," and the concept of the will to power, sent shockwaves through intellectual circles. Nietzsche challenged conventional morality, urging individuals to embrace their inner strength and strive for self-mastery. His ideas, though controversial, have had a profound influence on philosophy, literature, and art. Nietzsche's work remains relevant today, offering a potent antidote to complacency and urging us to question everything. He is a philosopher who continues to provoke, inspire, and unsettle in equal measure. He is, without doubt, a philosopher worth grappling with. The death of God, a crisis of faith and values. God is dead, Nietzsche famously proclaimed. Now before we all descend into anarchy and despair, let's unpack what he actually meant. Nietzsche wasn't simply announcing a celestial demise, he was diagnosing a cultural shift, a fading belief in absolute truths, and the waning authority of religion. The Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason and scientific inquiry, had chipped away at the foundations of faith. Nietzsche saw this death of God not as a cause for celebration, but as a profound crisis. With the demise of God, he argued, came the collapse of the moral framework upon which Western civilization was built. The old values, pity, humility, self-sacrifice were, according to Nietzsche, symptoms of a slave morality designed to keep the powerful in check. He believed that these values stifled individual potential and prevented the flourishing of human greatness. This death, he argued, left a gaping void in its wake. Without God, who would provide meaning and purpose? Nietzsche's answer was both terrifying and exhilarating. We must create our own values. This is no easy task, but it is the challenge and the burden of the modern individual. The implications of this death of God are still debated today. Nietzsche's proclamation remains a stark reminder that the search for meaning and value is an ongoing individual pursuit. It is a challenge we cannot ignore, a philosophical hangover from the demise of absolute truths. The will to power, the driving force of existence. Now, let's delve into one of Nietzsche's most famous and often misunderstood concepts, the will to power. This isn't some Machiavellian thirst for domination or a recipe for global conquest, it's far more nuanced than that. Nietzsche saw the will to power as the fundamental, animating force that drives all living things. Imagine a plant stubbornly pushing its roots through concrete, striving for sunlight and growth. That, my friends, is the will to power in action. It's the relentless urge to overcome obstacles, to expand one's sphere of influence, to become the best possible version of oneself. For Nietzsche, this will to power wasn't limited to the realm of brute force. It encompassed the artistic impulse, the pursuit of knowledge, even the act of creation itself. It's about self-mastery, self-overcoming, and the relentless pursuit of growth. Now, before you envision Nietzschean supervillains taking over the world, remember this. The will to power is not inherently good or evil. It's a neutral force, a kind of existential fuel. How we harness that power, how we direct that will, is what determines its moral character. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power remains a provocative idea, urging us to consider the driving forces behind our actions and aspirations. It's a call to embrace the fullness of our being, to strive for greatness in all its forms. Beyond good and evil master-slave morality explored. Let's talk morality, shall we? Nietzsche wasn't exactly a fan of the traditional kind. He saw it as a tool of the weak, a way of keeping the strong in check. He called this slave morality, a system of values based on resentment and fear. In contrast to slave morality, Nietzsche proposed the idea of master morality. This wasn't about being a tyrannical overlord, it was about creating one's own values based on strength, nobility, and self-affirmation. The master, in Nietzsche's view, is not beholden to the judgments of the herd. They are a creator of values, a law unto themselves. Now, before you accuse Nietzsche of advocating for anarchy, remember this. He wasn't advocating for a world without morals. He was calling for a re-evaluation, a transvaluation of values. He wanted us to move beyond the simplistic binaries of good and evil. to create our own ethical frameworks based on individual strength and self-mastery. Nietzsche's critique of morality remains as relevant today as ever. In a world saturated with conflicting ideologies and moral relativism, his call to question, to reassess, and to forge our own paths resonates deeply. He forces us to confront the uncomfortable question, what are our values, and where do they come from? Ah, the Übermensch, the Superman, the Overman! This Nietzschean concept has been misinterpreted, misused, and downright abused over the years. Let's set the record straight, shall we? The Übermensch isn't some blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan ideal. It's not about physical superiority or racial purity. The Übermensch is a philosophical ideal, a vision of human potential fully realized. Imagine a being who has overcome the limitations of conventional morality, who has embraced the will to power, and who dances to the rhythm of their own self-created values. This is the Übermensch in a nutshell. The Übermensch is a creator, not a destroyer. They are a force for life, for affirmation, for the relentless pursuit of self-overcoming. They are the embodiment of what Nietzsche called the will to power, directed towards creation, growth, and self-actualization. The idea of the Übermensch is a call to arms, an invitation to embrace our potential, and to strive for greatness in all its forms. It's a reminder that we are not bound by the limitations of tradition or the shackles of conventional morality. We are free to create our own values, to forge our own paths, and to become the authors of our own lives. Section 6. Eternal Recurrence, the ultimate test of will. Fasten your seatbelts, dear readers, because we're about to delve into the vertiginous concept of eternal recurrence. Imagine this. What if every joy, every sorrow, every triumph, every humiliation, every single moment of your life were to repeat itself not once but for all eternity? This is the terrifying, exhilarating proposition of eternal recurrence. It's not so much a scientific theory as it is a thought experiment, a way of testing the mettle of our values and desires. Would you embrace this endless cycle with a joyous heart, or would you crumble under the weight of its repetition? For Nietzsche, the ability to say yes to life, in all its messy, repetitive glory, was the ultimate test of one's affirmation of life itself. The concept of eternal recurrence is a philosophical gut punch, forcing us to confront the weight of our choices and the depth of our commitment to life. It's a stark reminder that every moment, however fleeting, carries the weight of eternity. Section 7. Nietzsche's enduring legacy, a controversial influence. Nietzsche's influence on 20th and 21st century thought is undeniable. His ideas have seeped into literature, art, psychology, and even pop culture. From existentialism to postmodernism, his fingerprints are everywhere. Writers like Albert Camus, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Ayn Rand grappled with his ideas. Artists like Picasso and Munch found inspiration in his exploration of the human condition. Psychologists like Freud and Jung built upon his insights into the human psyche. But Nietzsche's legacy is far from straightforward. His emphasis on power, his critique of traditional morality, and his concept of the Übermensch have been misinterpreted and misused, often with dangerous consequences. Section 8. A legacy of misinterpretations, Nietzsche and the Nazis. It's impossible to talk about Nietzsche's legacy without addressing the elephant in the room, the Nazis. The Nazis cherry-picked and distorted Nietzsche's ideas to fit their own twisted worldview. They latched onto his concept of the Übermensch, stripping it of its philosophical nuance and twisting it into a justification for their own racial ideology. This appropriation of Nietzsche's work was a gross misinterpretation. Nietzsche was deeply critical of nationalism, anti-Semitism, and the very idea of racial purity. He loathed the mediocrity and herd mentality that he saw as characteristic of German culture at the time. The Nazis' use of Nietzsche's work is a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most nuanced ideas can be twisted and manipulated for nefarious purposes. It's a reminder to approach Nietzsche's work with a critical eye, to engage with its complexity, and to resist the temptation to shoehorn his ideas into pre-existing ideologies. Section 9. Conclusion. Nietzsche's enduring challenge. Nietzsche's philosophy is not for the faint of heart. It's a challenging, often unsettling body of work that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us. He is a philosopher who demands we think for ourselves, question everything, and embrace the fullness of our being. His enduring challenge to us is this: to create our own values, to embrace the will to power, and to strive for greatness in all its forms. He calls on us to become the artists of our own lives, to live with passion, intensity, and an unwavering commitment to self-overcoming. So, dear readers, I leave you with this. Grapple with Nietzsche, wrestle with his ideas, and see where they lead you. You may not always agree with him, but I guarantee you won't be bored. And in the words of the great man himself, that which does not kill us makes us stronger.